We're going to talk more about this. I'm joined by Charles Morrison. He's the president of the East-West Center, joining us from beautiful Honolulu. Welcome to the show. It's good to see you. We talked earlier about APEC being a big win for China, and I guess a part of that is because of the FTAP. I mean, that's their big trade deal. Do you agree that this is it's a pretty big deal for them and a big win?
Well, I just came back from the ministerial and meetings and the CEO summit, and I think everybody thought it was a big win for everyone. But of course, China was a host. A lot of side deals were made with the Chinese, and the FTAP study is something that they were supporting. So I think it was a very successful APEC summit for China.
You know, it's been quite a wild year. Of course, we've been talking about Russia and Ukraine throughout the year, and you have to imagine, as we look at some of the pictures here from the meeting, what was the conversation about Russia, or was there one?
There wasn't a great deal of conversation about Russia. Russia is kind of left out of these free trade agreements that you've been talking about. When Mr. Putin came and spoke to the CEO summit, he did take questions, and many of them were from Chinese business people, and quite a few of them were questions about law and order, foreign direct investment regulations, currency exchange, convertibility, and things that were very difficult questions for the Russians to respond to.
So next stop for these leaders, the ASEAN discussion, and then also the G20 as well. I mean, there are a lot more meetings to come. Any insights as to what topics need to be followed up on at the G20?
Well, it's very interesting that these three meetings come in a row, and in a sense, I think that was to accommodate Mr. Obama. But the East Asia Summit will probably focus a little more on some of the political issues. The G20, of course, is a global meeting, and it focuses more on the macroeconomic as opposed to the trade issues.
One of the key issues leading up to this big meeting, of course, was the air pollution issue and smog. And so that leads me to talk about climate change here. Did they have a discussion on the sidelines at all? I know there's a number of meetings around the world that will be taking place on climate change. Did they have a meaningful conversation about that?
You know, I think there are a couple of things that were important to keep in mind as you're talking about trade. One is that APEC has pioneered reduction in tariffs on a voluntary basis on environmentally friendly goods. And that agreement, as I understand it, is going to be extended, increased to new areas. And another agreement that was discussed on the side and may relate a bit is the discussion of information technology. There hasn't been a new agreement since 1996. There's been an awful lot of new technology. And so moving ahead with that in an APEC context tees it up for the World Trade Organization, and if approved, it would be the first liberalization scheme at the WTO level in actually many years now. So a lot of things are happening in APEC. Disaster management and those issues, which again relate to climate change, another area on the agenda.
We're looking at some more of these pictures here of the 21 member economies. You know, when they talk about the state of the economy, the reason why they're together is to talk about the global economy, to talk about how their countries may ultimately benefit from the global economy. And there's been a lot of talk this year about the slowdown in China. Now, we haven't seen a lot of headlines from the meeting, but I'm sure that's something that they talked about on the sidelines, right?
Well, let me just say that I think one of the changes in APEC is that it used to be about the region and how to promote growth in the region. It's really now about the world. And APEC economies are the leading area of the world. China has been slowing down, but the President Xi himself kept referring to the new normal. 7.3% growth is not bad growth at all. And one would expect as China's economy becomes more mature, that there will be continued slower growth than there was before. He did refer to some of the challenges for China, and he tried to reassure people that while they were big challenges, they weren't, quote, too scary.
It wasn't that long ago, and I'm sure you recall this, that they talked about having one currency similar to the euro, but this time in Asia. Now that lost traction after the financial crisis both times. Is that something that you think ultimately might get talked about at some point?
Well, maybe so. I think the question really is not a single currency. It's more how to coordinate action in the financial area, and perhaps how to have how national currencies, including the yen, the yuan, and so forth, be used more extensively as currencies of settlement for international trade transactions.
Yeah, I'm sure you can talk to our friends in Europe. They'd have something to say about that. Charles Morrison, stay right there. We're going to take a quick break and we'll come back to you for more on this.